Hey everyone, welcome back to Gophercises. In this video, what we're trying to create is an image transformer. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what we're trying to do, and then in the next video we'll jump into building it. And I'm going to warn you that I haven't actually built this yet, so I don't have demos to show you, which will be much nicer for this, but that'll be okay. So basically we want to use this primitive CLI. It's this application that was created by, I guess, Michael Fogelman. And it essentially gives you a way to take images that you upload and transform them into some geometric type version. So it will, the way it works is basically it takes the image and it tries to find the most, it says here, the most optimal shape. So basically it'll try to find a big image it can draw, like a big rectangle or whatever shape you're using, that takes the image from its current version of, just being a blank page or whatever it happens to be, to closest to the original drawing. And it'll keep doing this over and over again. So like if you uploaded a picture where there was just a hand, it might choose a big circle here for the, in roughly this color, because that will take it from nothing on the screen to close to the original image. And it'll keep doing this over and over again. So you end up getting a bunch of shapes like you're seeing here, and it'll end up being a pretty cool artistic type effect on your images. So there's a bunch of examples here. If you go through the page, he shows you sort of how it's being done here on the left. I should have just jumped straight to this. And it's really cool because, it's just drawing shapes to try to match the original image, and it'll very, quickly start to resemble the original picture, but while still being, more artistic and not like anything like the original drawing. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to create a web server that uses this service, and will sort of guide users through the process of using it. And I'm not going to try to do anything nearly as complex as what you could do. There is a native Mac application that Michael has made, and I think he charges for it, but maybe not. I don't remember. But this has a whole lot of options and stuff like that, so you can see that this has way more, customization and stuff like that than we're going to do. But what I want to do is I want to basically just make something where you upload a picture, and then our program, our server, will take that picture and maybe run it through 4 or 5 different options. So maybe we'll run it through different shapes. So here there's all the shapes that you can possibly use, or the mode rather, and maybe we'll choose 4 of them or 5 of them at random or something, and we'll generate the images for them, and we'll show the user, here are your 5 options to choose from. Well, then the user can choose the one that they like, out of those 5 images, and they'll click on it, and our server will take that choice. So maybe they chose the option of circle, and it'll go ahead and it'll say, okay, they like the circle. Let's generate maybe 4 or 5 more pictures that use the circle, but maybe they alter some other variable here. So maybe they alter the alpha, maybe they alter the the number of shapes, n, because if you look up here, or if you look down here at this example, if your number of shapes is very low, you'll see that the image is going to be nowhere near the original. But the more shapes you add, the closer it's going to be to the original. So giving variable amounts there could give you like a more artistic type feel versus a more realistic feel. And basically the goal is that every selection the user makes, we're going to remember all the choices they made up to that point, and then try to give them a couple more options based off of that until we think that we've sort of exhausted all of our options. And you'll see here that, this rep flag, it says that it's mostly good for Beziers, assuming I'm probably butchering that, but whatever. So, there's different things like that you can decide. If they choose, mode 6, maybe we want to give them an option to see different variable or different rep flag options. But if they choose maybe rectangle, then maybe that doesn't make as much sense, and maybe we want to do something else. So that's the goal here, is just to make a slightly guided tour that goes through that process. And at the end, you'll have a couple, once you've chosen all the options, so say you've chose rectangle, you've chose that you like the number of shapes to be 300, and maybe maybe you chose an alpha of some value, and at the very end, we'll generate maybe 3 or 4 options and be like, choose the one you like best and give them a way to download it or view it in some way. And that's really just the goal of the whole exercise. So once you get that working, there are ways to improve upon this. So I'm going to come down here to the bonus real quick before we come back to the rest of it. You could do other image type transformations. So I mentioned that the very first step we're going to do is choosing the shapes or the mode. Maybe that's the first step you want to try. Another thing you could do is add something like this Legoizer service. So what this does is it takes an image and it sort of makes it look like it's printed on a Lego block of Legos, or the top of like a Lego sheet. And that's what's happening with both of these. And this one has its own set of, different options. There's not a ton, but, there are a couple different options there. And then another thing you could do is, let's say you wanted to take an image and you wanted to turn it into black and white only. Now, I'm not saying grayscale, I literally mean black and white only, so that it could be printed on something like a zebra label printer, which are these printers that usually use them for like postage labels and stuff like that. But you can only print either a black pixel or a white pixel at any given spot. And when you print white, you just don't do anything. Black means you sort of just make that spot black. And you could go through and try to turn a picture or some sort of uploaded image into a black and white only thing. And the way that service might work is maybe you have a slider or some way that the user can choose, whether a spot that's colored should become black or white. And just as an example of a way to try to choose that, you could look at maybe the hue and the saturation and other aspects of it and have some sort of, slider scale where like if the hue is above this value and the saturation is above this value, then we say it's black. Otherwise, it becomes white. And those could be your variables that sort of get tweaked as you go through the steps in choosing your image. So there are ways that you could add different image transformations, and each of these are going to use a different set of tools. So you'd want to design your server so that at each step it sort of chooses which of those you're going to use and then goes through its series of steps that it has. And that's really just the goal of this, is just to build some sort of cool image transformation server like that. So I'm going to go down to the notes and suggestions real quick before we get into coding. The first is that whenever you're interacting with primitive, the goal of this exercise was to get you practice using things like the OS exec package, so running things on the command line through your Go code, creating temporary files, and the different stuff like that. Now, there's other things we're going to look at that are going to be interesting and useful, but that was kind of what led to this exercise. So I definitely suggest using the OS exec package and running the primitive CLI. I'm guessing since primitive is written in Go, there's probably a way to interact with this directly through the Go code, but I'm not going to be doing that. And I suggest that you don't either, at least not on your, well, if you want to, it's up to you. But I'm going to suggest that you check out the OS exec package and temporary files and that sort of stuff, because it can be really cool to see how that works. And then maybe later, if you want to, you can come back as another bonus and see if you can use the primitive, use this library, and maybe there's an API available that you can actually use. I'm guessing there probably is somewhere here. The other thing, and this is down here, this part here, focus on just getting this working first. So just get some version of it working with primitive. And then once you have that working, you'll probably notice that you're generating a lot of images, and you most likely aren't deleting them. You're more than likely just letting them sit on the server, which is fine. What I would probably do is once you get this whole thing going and everything's up and running, I would spend a little bit of time maybe thinking about a way to manage images as you no longer need them. So when we go to a step, say it's step 1 where we show them different shapes or different modes, perhaps whenever they choose something like the circle, we can go through all the other images and say either delete them immediately, or maybe we can set a timer of, delete these in a couple minutes in case they happen to copy links to them. So you can do different stuff like that that'll tell it, that'll tell your server how to manage these images. And maybe the images that they do choose, you want to, give them a little bit more time to download them or share them or something like that. So you could do something where, every time they select an image, you add a little bit more time to it. So, if you're deleting all the images when they don't select them, or maybe you're setting all the images to delete in 1 minute, you could say if they select an image, we'll give them 15 minutes until we delete it. And you could have some sort of background program running that'll check that, in memory or database or whatever you're doing. We'll check that data and decide which images to delete and which ones to leave alone. And, and even at the very end, you could do something where like the image they choose and their final image, maybe you give them an hour to download that before you delete it from the server. So, this is just something that's, it's probably not going to introduce a lot of new packages. You might want to use Go routines and that sort of stuff to sort of run a lot of this in the background, but this should give you some sort of project to work on that will, it'll make you think about how you design your code and how you can sort of do these background processes and keep track of this stuff. So that's another goal of this exercise, is to, get it working, but then to come back and have a way to, think a little bit more and to try to apply different skills and see how you could do this background work. So that's it. I wish I had a demo application to show you, but I haven't built this yet. So maybe once I get one, I'll splice this video and put it there. But go ahead and jump in, try coding it, and let me know what you think. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get this primitive package installed, and we're going to just go ahead and make sure it's working. So I'm going to go get, I need to check out a branch, but I'll do that in a second. All right, so I'm in the P1 branch, and I did the go get for that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and just run this, and I need to give it some input and some output. So I'm going to use just a, so I've got primitive, it seems to be working. Input is going to be temp. Let's use the jump.png. The output will be out.png here. And we'll do the number of shapes is 100. So it's going to take a couple seconds to run, I suppose. I don't know exactly how long this takes to run, which is going to be something we're going to have to think about as we build out our application. It's possible that running all these images is going to make it a little bit slow. So we'll just have to make sure that our servers, it's fine if it takes some time, but depending on if you were to deploy this somewhere, that might change things up. So let's see, we have out.png, and you'll see here's the jump rope gopher. So the original is from the Gophercises stuff. So it's just this jump rope gopher. And this is the output. It looks like it started with a black background, and this is sort of what it came up with. All right, so it's working. We've got that going. What we're going to do now is we're going to try to make this run from the command or from our code. So we're going to look at the OS exec package in Golang. And so basically this command is what we're going to be using. We could use command context where you can pass in a context and you can do things like a deadline and some other stuff like that. I think you can make most of that to work there, but I haven't messed with it too much. But we're just going to go ahead and use the command and just wait for our commands to actually execute. Oh, sorry. So the arguments for this, basically you split your arguments by spaces. I know that's one of the things you're supposed to be doing with this. So, and if you look here, its name is the name of the command, I believe, and then all the args are like the args you're going to pass in. Now, I don't remember if the flags are supposed to be two separate strings or what, so we're just going to go ahead and experiment with this and see what we get to work. I'm going to grab the example code here because I think that's just easier. We're going to come back here. We're going to go to main.go. I'm just going to paste this all in there and save it. And I'm going to change this to primitive. And then we're going to look at, let's see, how do we run this before? These are all the options we used. So let me go ahead and first off, let me get rid of this out.png. Okay, we modified that file. That's fine. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste this all here in a big string. And I'm going to do strings dot, I think fields is what we want. So I'll show you what fields is doing here in a second. Strings Golang. So you could do split and just tell it to split on spaces or something like that. But fields, if I recall correctly, so it splits each string S around each instance of one or more consecutive whitespace characters as identified by Unicode is space. So essentially this is going to take some string that's got, a bunch of different spaces in it like this, and it's going to run, it's going to turn it into a slice like this. So exactly what we kind of want. Because the arguments, it doesn't want a big string with a bunch of spaces, it wants individual strings. So I'm going to do this, then I'm going to put ... at the end, which basically says that I want you to pass this as a variadic parameter, not as an actual slice. And then this, we don't actually need input. We're not going to have input for this primitive program. That's this flag here. We just tell it what image to use. So we'll get rid of that. And this out, there's a buffer. It's going to run, and then it's going to print the string. I think that's fine the way it's doing it. I don't know why it's doing it in all caps necessarily, but that doesn't make a difference. That might have been what the command was doing. I think there's another way you can also do output. I think this just gives you, or combined output. I think this will run it. Let me go ahead and look. If I recall correctly, combined output will run the command and returns its combined standard output and standard error. So I think we're just going to do that right now. So I'm going to just get rid of this. I don't actually care about doing anything special. And what does this return? Byte and error. Error is not equal to nil. We'll just panic for the time being. We'll print line string of B and get rid of all this. So let's see if this works. Go run main.go. It's going to take a couple seconds to run this, run the primitive stuff. I should probably lower the number of shapes just for these demo runs, but I'll let it be for the time being. All right, let's open out. And it looks like another version was made with triangles, but it's still working. Let's try to change the shape here. So let's go change the mode of primitive. Let's try 6, -M and 6. And we'll change this to maybe 50. I don't know, that should be fine. And we'll run this, and you'll notice that it's going to overwrite the out.png, but that's fine. We'll deal with getting, different output files and that sort of stuff later. I just want to make sure we've got this running. All right, so this is our jump rope. Apparently we need a lot more shapes when we're doing just lines like this. So let's make this 500, and let's try it again. Oh, I didn't want to open this. All right, so this will probably take a little bit longer to run, but that's okay. So once we get this working, what I'm going to try to do next is I'm going to look at our code and our command that we're running, and I'm going to try to turn it into a function call that we can make. So rather than trying to build this command every time, I'm going to try to turn it into, some easy way to do that. So I'll probably create a primitive package, and inside of that, I'll go ahead and I'll run this, command like I'm normally doing, but I'll try to make it so that we have, a little bit easier way of passing in these arguments that we want. This one's taking a while, apparently. It also doesn't help that I'm running this all on a laptop that's not the beefiest computer in the world. Oh boy. Apparently 500 is not the number we should stick with. Let me make this 100 from now on, and maybe we just can't use mode 6 for the time being. All right, open out. Okay, you'll see here there's a lot more shapes. This one actually ends up being pretty interesting when you're looking at it. I'm guessing that it's treating the background as the transparency as black. That looks like what it's doing here. But this is still really cool because it gives you an idea of what the gopher looks like without fully drawing it. I just wish I had a faster CPU so we didn't have to wait for all that stuff. I'll have to record this one at some point again on a faster computer. Okay, so we've got this going. Let's go ahead and turn this into just a function for now. And we got to figure out what are the arguments we care about. So the first is going to be an input file. And then the second is going to be an output file. So those are both strings. And then the third thing I'm looking at here is we've got the number of shapes and we've got the mode. So let's go ahead and say num shapes int and mode, which is technically an int here, but I actually think we can do something better. I think we can come here and take these and turn it into something actually useful. So let's just call this a type primitive mode. I think that's fine. And then we'll do here, we'll paste, let me copy these, come back and paste them. And I'm going to do a little bit of fancy multi-select stuff. So primitive mode equals iota. And now I need to get rid of these commas. And I missed one. And I actually don't think I know what it's doing. This needs to be an integer. And then this will be a primitive mode. Okay. So assuming I got this all right, this should be 0, 1, 2, going all the way up. We can test that here in a second. And we're going to go ahead and just try this out. We're going to copy this command in the combined output. I guess for this, we could just return a string and an error. That's basically the combined output, return values. So we could return a string of B, error. And then for this command, we're running primitive. I think we're still probably going to do string.fields, but what I'm going to actually do is just build this string first. So I'm going to paste this whole section in. And right now, these are all required. We'll find ways to make some of these a little bit more optional later too. So this right here is the input file. Then we've got the output file. And we've got the number of shapes, and we've got the primitive mode. So I'm going to do input file, output file, num shapes, and mode. And then finally, we're going to say args is going to be this. We'll say arg string. And I need to fix that. And then down here, we're going to say fields of arg string. And I think that should get everything working. So I'm going to copy primitive. I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to do primitive. We're going to pass in temp/jump, just like we were. Out.png. Number of shapes, let's do 100. And then for the mode, I'm going to try triangle. And we probably might want to rename a lot of these. Maybe it would be like mode combo, mode triangle, something like that. And when we move to a new package with a lot of this code, we can do that. But for the time being, I'm just kind of making it work. And I'm going to get rid of that. I don't actually need to do B, I can just print out. Okay, so I think that's all that I need. Let's go run this. And I think this is using triangle 100. So let's see how that goes. Although triangle is not what I should do. We already did a bunch of triangles. Let's do ellipse. Let's see what we get here. And 100 is definitely going to slow it down, but that's okay. And I know this is also probably going to look really weird because we're running this through the terminal. So it's like, why didn't we just run primitive? But when we start to actually build out the web server, having all this as a way that we can actually run it this way is nice. And then I think I mentioned this in the intro video, but the reason I really just want you to get used to using these commands is that sometimes you'll be using programs and stuff like that aren't necessarily written in Go or aren't easily accessible through binaries or things like that. Sorry, not binaries, but like through actual libraries. So sometimes you'll have to do stuff like this, and figuring out how to do it can be very helpful. Okay, so let's open out.png. And here's the version with, a bunch of ellipses to do the whole Gopher. Again, it looks different, looks kind of cool. We can sort of figure out what it is, but it's giving us a different version of it. So, I think that's enough for this video. We've got, this very primitive version working. Well, actually, I take that back. Let's go ahead and just move this to a package. There's no reason not to, and we haven't done a whole lot in this. We haven't gone too long in this video. So let me make dir primitive, and then we're going to code primitive, and I don't know what we want to call this. We'll just call it primitive.go. We're going to do package primitive. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and copy a lot of this code. So down to this, paste it in here. So we've got mode. I don't need to call it primitive mode because it's inside the primitive package now. I don't think that makes sense. And then we can actually make a lot of these, mode combo, mode triangle, etc. So I'm going to actually just do that now. And then I'm going to change case. I think I want it to be Pascal case. And I didn't mean to. All right, rotated rect. I'm going to go ahead and just fix a couple of these. Rotated ellipse. All right, that should be all of them. So we've got mode combo, mode triangle, a bunch of these modes that'll be easier to use. And I prefix these all with mode because I think it's just easier to find these constants whenever you're using the package this way. constant mode, or we'll say these are modes supported by the primitive package. Mode defines the shapes used when transforming images. And then, so there's a couple different ways we could handle this. Our primitive package could take in an input and output file, in which case we have to manage the files ourselves. Another option would be to give you like a reader, in which case primitive could delete the file automatically. So this is another option for us. And I don't know that that's necessarily, I'm going to change this real quick because it's bugging me. I don't know that that's necessarily the best option because, we would run primitive, it would generate the file, and then it would delete the file afterwards and give you a reader for, maybe some new in-memory version of it. But if we're going to keep these in memory, then that might not work as well. I'm not sure. You know what? We can go ahead and just do that. That'll be fine, I think. Worst case, we'll decide that doesn't work very well, but we can go ahead and just... we're going to go ahead and just call this func transform. It's going to accept a reader. It's an io.reader for a file. And we'll call this the image. And this might end up getting really weird because we're going to have to write it to a file. But I think that'll be okay. And it's also going to take in... I want to do options of some sorts. And it's going to be some sort of function. So we'll go ahead and say... we'll say type. Let's just create an option first. Func num shapes. And it's going to return a function that will... Let's say it returns a slice of strings. These will just be args that we're going to pass in. I think that's all we're really going to need for this. So this is going to return func string slice, return strings.fields, and this is going to be -n. We don't even need to do fields. We can just do a string slice. There's no reason not to do that. All right. So this is going to be -n, and then the second argument is going to be %dn. I just want this to be string, not strings. Okay. So I think that's all num shapes is going to do. So it looks like our options are just going to be a function that returns a string slice. And I could probably get away, and this is going to return an io.reader that's going to be for the image. All right, so I know that's a lot. We're going to need a mode. And we're probably going to have to come up with defaults of some sort, which is going to make this tricky. So maybe these options we're using don't make sense. I don't really know how primitive works if you don't provide the number. So let me just go ahead and see that. What happens if you don't give it a number? It complains. Okay. We'll say num shapes is required then. I think that's the only option that's actually required, though. I think the rest are all defaulted. So I can just get rid of this, and I can make this one the mode. We'll say with mode. I'm going to name all my options with something just to make it simpler for the time being. Mode. And the reason that I need to do that is I already have a mode type, so I'd have to rename that if I was going to make the function name mode. And that's just not worth doing in my opinion right now. So the mode is still going to be a %d, so that's fine. All right, with mode is an option for the transform function that will define the mode you want to use. By default, what is the default? Combo, I think, is what's the default's 1, so it's triangle. All right, so by default, mode triangle will be used. All right, so this is where we get really weird. We're going to need a temporary file as our input file, and we're going to have to read, whatever this image is, we're going to have to read into it, put it into that. And then we're going to need an output file that we can use as well. So we're going to say in out are going to be os.temp. I think there's a temp file somewhere. Os temp file golang. I really should have split this to a second video now that I'm doing all this, but that's okay. All right, apparently in ioutil there's a temp file. In the directory dir with the name beginning with prefix, opens a file for reading and writing, and returns the resulting os.file. If there is an empty string, temp file uses the default directory for temporary files. So we can do empty string here. I think that's fine. We'll do empty string prefix. We'll just do something. Yeah, it should be good. All right, ioutil.temp file, not temp dir. And then the prefix. We'll say this is the in. So we'll say in, comma, I think it's error. Yes. And this means this whole thing can return an error potentially. So if the error is not equal to nil, and this is one of those cases where we're not dealing with the error very effectively. We're just returning it. But realistically, if you were building this out, you could actually try to handle this error. Like maybe you could say, okay, if we have an issue with an error here, maybe we try to do it again. So there's different things you could do here that would actually handle this error a little bit better than what we're doing here. But for now, I'm just going to let it be. Then we've got for in.close. And then, is there a way to get the path of this or something? I'm going to look at the example. Tempfile.name. Okay. So that's what this is doing to clean up. So we're going to defer os.remove in.name. And basically, I want to make sure that this file gets deleted at the very end. I don't want to have a bunch of temporary files sticking around. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to delete this. Transform will take the provided image and apply a primitive transformation to it, then return a reader to the resulting image. Okay, so we're going to do this whole thing all over again with an output file. So I'm just copying the code for the time being. I think just writing the code without trying to be fancy and turn this into functions and stuff makes sense for right now. And then finally, so we've got this whole thing. We need to read the image into the input file, and then we need to run the program. And then once we've run the program, we need to turn the output file into something else. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and just do this. Okay, yeah, that's right. Sorry, I'm having a brain lapse for a second. I need to read the image into input file, in file. I'm just going to go ahead and comment these. Run primitive. And then once we run primitive with in equals, or with dash I, this is going to be in.name dash o out.name, something like that. And then we're going to, at the very end, we're going to read out into a reader, return reader, delete out, which is going to happen from this defer. Okay. So now that we've got that, let's going to make this one thing tricky. That'll be fine. Okay, so we're going to read the image into the file. So I'm just going to do io.copy. The destination is going to be input file. The source is going to be the image. And I'm just going to ignore the errors from this for the time being. Actually, I should get them. If the error is not equal to nil, return nil error. Why is it complaining? No new variables, that makes sense. All right, so now we want to run primitive. So I'm going to do primitive with in.name. I'm just going to skip these options for the time being. We'll get them here in a second whenever I pull this stuff all out, but that's fine. In.name, out.name, num shapes, and mode, we're just going to do mode combo. I think that's fine. And apparently I had a big, no? Just typo there. Okay, so we've got primitive rename or fixed with the typo here. So we run this whole thing and we should get a string and an error back. And it's possible there's an error in this string because the combined output is going to return standard error. So not super useful. I'm just going to go ahead and ignore it though. Actually, I'm going to call it std. It's fine for standard. Then we're going to go ahead and just do if error is not equal to nil, return nil, comma error. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and print out whatever was in, call the standard combo. And then once we've run this, we want to read whatever's in out into a reader. So I'm just going to use var b bytes.new buffer, I think is what I want. And then I'm going to do io.copy from, does new buffer return a pointer? I gotta friggin' fix this. That's not what I want. I'm going to return B. Okay. And I just did that wrong. That's okay. All right, new buffer does return a pointer, so I need to just make this be an out. All right, that fixes a lot of it. All right, so assuming that I need to get rid of that colon. All right, assuming I did this all right, basically I'm copying the image into, copying the image into the input file, checking for errors. I'm running primitive so that the input file should now have all of this stuff. I might need to close the input file, but I'm not positive. We'll mess with that here in a second. So then we run primitive with the input file, giving it the name of the input and the output files, the number of shapes, and the mode. We check for any errors, and then down here, we create a new buffer, which is something that can be a reader, and we copy everything from the output file into that buffer so that we can then return the buffer and the user can read from it. Now, you might have been tempted to return out here, but the reason that I didn't want to return the file, a pointer, this out file, is that up here we're calling os.remove out.name. So we're actually telling our program to delete this file whenever it's done. So we can't return a reader that's going to read from that file because it's not going to work at that point. So we definitely want to just copy everything from the file into this byte buffer. And we're going to see if this works. There's a chance that it won't because I have no idea. For instance, if I need to close something. I don't really know if this output file, the fact that I open it before I've actually written anything, is going to cause some weird issues. So we're just going to sort of find out what happens here. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of this. And I'm going to say out comma error is going to be primitive dot transform. And this is going to make things tricky. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just do transform and I need an image, a number of shapes, which I'll do is 50. I'm going to do nothing for these options. And then the image is going to have to be os.open. I want temp/jump.png. Just going to be file, comma, error. If error is not equal to nil, panic. Defer f.close. And I should be able to just pass this in here as this reader. And then this is going to give me an output file and an error. And I don't really know what's going to happen if I just copy this directly into the terminal, but we're going to try it. So we're going to copy everything out directly into the terminal. Now let's go ahead and run this. Oh, and I should warn you that depending on what terminal you're using, copying everything into os.standard out could be very different for you. Well, something happened at 18. So something went wrong here. I'm not really sure. It's not really giving me a whole lot of details here. So definitely panicked here. So we called transforms when it panicked. So inside of here, the question is, what did we get the error for? So I'll do return nil errors.new primitive failed to create temporary input file. I'm just going to go ahead and just do this through a lot of these. And I didn't mean to zoom in, but failed to create temporary output file. Errors.new primitive failed to copy image into temp input file. Then down here, errors.new primitive. What is this? I'm actually going to do thump.errorf here because I want to be able to do this standard combo and actually print it out in case I need it. And that way I'll go ahead and just print it out here too. And then finally, errors.new primitive failed to copy output file into byte buffer. All right, so that's all of these things. It should give us a better idea. I'm going to lower this to something like 10, just so it's going to be much quicker to run here. All right, failed to run the primitive command. Unrecognized file extension. I wonder if we can do a suffix of some sort. Because this is expecting a file extension of some sort, and that's part of our issue here. Temp file golang. Nope. Temp file golang. Well, I didn't realize that it was using well, I guess there's one way to do this. So when we create this input file and we create the output files, basically the issue we're running into right now is that it's going to create the file, but it's not going to, it's not going to have the right extension. And the only way to really fix that is to take the name of the file they give us and to just replace it with, or make a new file. So what we can do here is I'm going to copy all this. And I'm going to make a func temp file. And I'm going to say, this is going to be prefix. And I'm going to say suffix, which is going to be a string as well. We'll just call it extension. Okay, so we're going to create the temp file. I'm going to defer closing it. And then I'm going to do os.create. And this is going to create a file. And I'm going to do I want this to be in.name plus, I'll just do it this way. So in.name, and then the extension is going to be the last part. And we'll do this. So this is going to return a file and an error. And this is going to be os.file. All right, so we've got temp file here. Now I can come up here, and this will already have deleted the original temp file. It just gives us back the new one, which I think we can call .name on still. So we'll do in error is going to be temp file in, and we'll just do PNG. We're just going to assume we're always PNG for the time being. And then we'll do the same thing here. And maybe this will end up having to be an argument here. It'll be like an extension argument. Let's see what we get. All right, a bunch of gibberish output. So I should go ahead and copy that, not to standard out. I need to copy that somewhere else. So let's do, well, os.create, out.png. Let's do os.remove first. All right, we'll do out.png just in case it's there. And if it's not, I don't really care. We'll probably just ignore an error here. So we'll do os.create, file, comma, error. If error is not equal to nil, panic with the error. And then finally, we'll copy out into that file. No new variables on the left-hand side. We'll name this out file just because I don't want to have this conflict with this name up here. Let's say in file. Okay, now I'm going to run this. Let's open out.png, and you can see there's what looks like 10 shapes here. So let's change this up to, let's make it 33. Go ahead and run this again. I didn't want to open that. And I'm assuming that our code's deleting these files correctly. I haven't actually verified, so there's the small chance that I have a bug somewhere. So here's our gopher. You can see it's a mixture of shapes. It looks kind of cool because it looks almost like he got eyebrows, but I think that's from the bandana. But we have this all working, and depending on the number of shapes we're using, it's going to change it a little bit. All right, I think that's a good stopping point. We have a very, very rough primitive package, and we're doing some cool things here where you can pass in a reader. I wanted to do it because I thought it was just kind of interesting, but knowing that we also need file extensions, maybe that's not going to make as much sense. I'm not sure. Maybe we just need to have a second option that's just the image encoding type, because that's what it's getting from the extension, I believe, is the image encoding type. But anyway, I think this is a good stopping point. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and take what we have here, which is, it's not perfect, but it works. We're just going to continue assuming we have PNGs for the time being, and we're going to try to make a lot of this work with the web server. Okay, so we have we have this code here. We have this primitive package. It's it's not amazing, but it's working. What we're going to do now is we're going to try to start up a server that gives us a form to upload a file, and then we'll parse the file that we upload, and then for now we're just going to run it through the primitive transform, with whatever the default options are, and see if we can output the result. So we're going to start up here. We're going to do something like http.handle. Actually, we're going to do mux is going to be http.newServMux. I'm not going to use the default servmux. So we're going to do mux.handle. And then we're going to need a func, wr, something like this. And this needs to be handle func, actually. All right, inside of here, we're going to display the form. So I'm going to say HTML is going to be something like HTML body. And here we want something like form action equals upload. I think that's fine. I don't want a comma. Method equals post. I think enc type, I think we want this. I don't know if we actually need it. Multi-part / form data. I think this is roughly what we want. I don't remember, it's been a while. Trying to get rid of that thing. I'm going to close out the body in the HTML right now, just so I don't forget. And I'm going to close out this form. Then inside of here, we need an input. It needs to be a type equals file. We need a name, we'll call it image, and we don't really need an ID. And then we're going to need a button. Type equals submit. And we're going to say upload image. All right, so I think that's it. That's basically all we're doing for this right now. mux.handlefunc. And I know technically I should limit this to just post, but I don't really care right now. I'm just going to go ahead and func wr. And in here, we want to get the file from the form. So how do we do that? Let me go to the HTML package. Why? I want the regular net HTML, not this X one. Why am I getting that? This is what I want. Okay, so I'm just gonna search form file. All right, parse files. That's for template, not what I want. What? Oh, I'm the HTML template package. That's not what I want. I want net HTML. Why? Oh, no wonder. I don't want to search for HTML. I want net HTTP. Wow. Really had a brain lapse today. And this is actually a package. We're going to do form file again. Nothing. How about file? Serve file, no. Type file, no. Form file, there we go. It's one word apparently. So form file returns the first file for the provided form key. The form file calls parse multi-part form and parse form if necessary. So this looks like what I'm probably going to want. So let's go ahead and grab it and try it. It comes from the request. So we'll say, what was it? We got file, header, and error. r.form file. And then the key string. I'm assuming this is the name from the HTML we have. This name equals image. We'll say if error is not equal to nil. We'll do http.error. Probably bad request is a valid response here, but I don't know. All right, so we've got file and header. Header dot, what do we have? File name. Well, that's useful to get the extension. So let's go ahead and HTML extension of file. Why am I doing HTML? Extension of file Golang. All right, looks like file path has some sort of tool to do this. The extension function. That's probably what we're going to want. So we'll do file path.ext. And we'll say extension is going to be that. And I know we don't use that right now, but it is something we're going to want in the future. Because we mentioned here transform file only works for PNGs. Eventually we're going to need to pass in whatever that extension is. So I'm just going to go and grab it because I know we can get it here. And then, is there anything else on header that looks useful? Not really. I mean, open's not going to be useful because we already have a file that's open. Okay, so we'll do file dot. I'm going to guess that we should probably close this at some point, but it doesn't really say here. Shouldn't hurt to defer it, so we'll just do defer file.close. And then in here, we want to do, we have an input file. That's what this is. We want to come down here and basically grab this, copy this. This is going to be an HTTP error with something different. It's going to be status internal server error. I think that's fine. In file in this case is going to be the file. I'm just going to comment out that extension line for the time being. And then we get the output, which is a reader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do w.header.set content type. What is PNG content type? Image PNG. And then we're going to do io.copy. Into W, we're going to write whatever's in out. And headers declared not used. Oh, of course it's not used. This. And I'm just going to say, I'm just doing underscore equals extension so this error goes away. So we'll say to do actually use this. All right, now I should be able to get rid of all of this stuff. I don't think I need any of it now. And we can do http.listen and serve 3000 with mux. I should probably do something. Oh, my cat. My cat's like in my office way more often than normal now, and she's just crawling all over my desk. Just hoping she doesn't hit my other keyboard. I have like a mechanical keyboard I can't record with, and she'll decide to lay on it mid-recording, which is troublesome. All right, go run main.go. This should start a server. Should be able to go to localhost 3000. All right, look at this sweet looking form. I don't know what any of these are. So, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. Go source. In here, I want to go to github.com/Gophercises/transform/temp, and I've got this jump.png. Upload the image, see what we get. Now this is going to be really slow because it's waiting for the server to do all of the image processing. But we got an image back. I'm actually kind of curious. I don't know what size the original was. So I don't know. It's going to be partially zoomed in, I think, because I have my whole browser zoomed in. But, oh man, I tried to open that same tab. Okay. So right now it's just returning the image, which is fine. It's just like we can't refresh this page and get it to work because we'd have to upload an image again, and this endpoint just doesn't do that. But it is working, so that's cool. What we're going to do now is, we want to keep these in memory somehow. Well, there's a couple different ways we could do this, but I think for the time being, I'm just gonna call this. Actually, I take that back. We're gonna do two things here. I'm gonna use the extension. I'm gonna make this work for other image types, at least for a JPEG. So we got JPG. So we'll just do fump.sprintf. So we'll just throw the extension in there. I think this will work for JPG or JPEG. Probably not. It needs an E. What I probably need to do is actually get a map. So I'm just going to do switch, ext, case, JPEG, fall through, case, JPEG that way. Then we're going to do content type like this. All right. We're also going to do case PNG. And that's, really don't need that line down below. Default http.error w invalid image type bad request. All right, we'll do something like that. And then up here we've got the extension. The only thing I want to do now is with this transform, I want to pass in the extension as well. So extension 33, something like that. Go to the primitive package. Where are we at here? I don't actually use, do I use this? Oh, I do, right there. Okay, so I want extension, which is a string. All right, so we're just gonna do it that way. And this are both gonna use extension. I think that's all that I needed. Gonna make sure my code compiles. And let's test this out again. Let's choose a file. And I'm gonna get my test gopher. Invalid image type. That's not good. Why did it fail? Seems like it came through to here, but I don't know why. I wonder if the extension has something else on it. Actually. Let's go ahead and just pass in the extension here. Restart the server and try it out again, see what we get. Okay, apparently it's using the period, which is not what I wanted. So up here, I'm going to do 1:: on that. Basically, I'm saying everything from the first index onwards, we're going to skip the period. And that should fix this, I hope. All right, we got my test gopher. And looks pretty crazy there. Let me go ahead and open this one so you can see what it actually looks like. Open temp/test. It's, yeah, this gopher for a course I'm working on now. I can bring it up so you can, there's actually some text at the bottom from the course that I'm working on. But yeah, that's the test gopher. So you can see it looks kind of like it, but you can see a little test dummy type thing there, sort of. All right. That's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to try to actually get it to go through all those different options. Actually, I take that back. The next video, what I'm probably going to do is just find a way to consistently store these images so that we can actually access them. So maybe I'll redirect the user at this point to a specific link and make sure we're storing links for these images and deleting them over time. And then we'll decide how we want to handle it from there. But yep, that should be it. Okay, so we created the web server. It's this code here. We created this primitive package and we added the extension part to it. So we've got that working. What we need to do next is we need to find some way to keep these images, keep them around. So there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm trying to figure out how I'd like to do it. So one of the ways we could do it is through basically just sticking them on the hard drive and using a file server. So maybe we should just do that. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like mux.handle. This will be image / and then in here we're going to put something like http.fileserver. Then we need http.dir. And what directory we want to use? We'll use, let's use the image directory. So we'll do ./image/ and we're going to go ahead and, this is going to error, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. So over here, or in the terminal, I'm just going to make dir image, and we're going to have that image directory. And I'm actually going to code.getIgnore, and I'm going to take image, that whole directory. I'm going to make sure it's not stored in our source control because I don't want that there. All right, so this image directory should not be in source control, and it's going, let me go ahead and make sure that's the case. It is. And it's going to be where we're storing images from. But I'm going to go ahead and just copy out into image. I'm going to go ahead and move it, and I'm just going to see if I can make this work. And I'm expecting it to not work. And I'll explain why here in a second. So if I go to localhost 3000/image/out.png, this is going to error. So what's going on? Whenever you do http.fileserver with this directory, it's going to assume that whatever path comes in is relative to this starting point. So it's, once you're inside this directory, our path has /image/out.png. So it's actually looking for another directory inside of img that's named img. So if I were to actually inside of here, do new folder, name it img, and then inside of that, put this out, move it. And now I'm not going to restart my server, but I'm going to come back here and refresh. Now it's working. So the reason this happens is basically it's just what I just explained. Whenever you start this, it's going to start a file server and it doesn't know what path this directory came from. It just knows, this is the directory I'm serving, the file server at least, and it knows to go ahead and, just serve things there based on whatever path it gets. So the easy way to fix this is to, instead of creating this image directory like we did, which is kind of messy and ugly, is to do http.strip prefix, I think is what it is. Strip prefix. And the prefix we're going to strip is img. And then we're going to pass in this handler here. So this whole file server thing is what we're going to pass in. So this line is a little bit hard to see what's actually going on. So I'm going to go ahead and just put file server on its own line. So that's this file server. And then we pass file server into this strip prefix function call. So that's this part here. And then we pass that whole thing, that strip prefix with file server, into mux.handle as the handler. So that's what we're doing there. And when you do strip prefix here, I will warn you that this is going to strip the leading slash. And I'm pretty sure the file server handles this fine, but if you're doing your own code, sometimes it can lead to some weird things where you expect the path to start with a slash and it doesn't. So just keep that in mind. If you wanted to do this, you could do that. So then it'll keep the leading slash. So I can come back here and refresh. It's going to say not found because the image is in the wrong directory now. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to get rid of this second image directory. And I'm going to come back here and refresh, and it's working again. Okay, so we have a file server. The next thing we want to do is set up some sort of code that will keep track of images in there and will delete them at some point. So, how do we want to do this? Well, I take that back. The next thing we want to do is when somebody uploads and we output something, we want to make sure that we can put it inside of that directory. So what we would probably do here is you can do a directory, I think. So if we do ioutil.temp file, the directory can be this image, and then we can do out underscore is the suffix. The only annoying part here is they're going to have to do the same thing we did here in this code. We're going to have to go ahead and make sure this works with creating a new file with the correct extension. So we're just going to copy that code back here. I'm going to make it temp file. And this right here is going to be image. I'm just going to hard code it in there for now. I don't really care. This is going to be out. And I don't think that was supposed to actually be hard coded in the primitive one. No, this is supposed to be prefix. Hopefully that didn't break anything. I mean, it wouldn't have broke anything then, but hopefully changing it now doesn't break anything. This is supposed to be prefix. And this is going to be main, failed to create a temporary file. So we have extension there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say F is going to, let's say, out file. Yeah, out up there is a reader. So out file, comma, air is going to be temp file. Prefix is going to be out underscore, although we don't need that at all at this point. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that empty. We don't really need it, so I don't care. We're going to pass in ext. If air is not equal to nil. I can http.error here, but realistically, once we start writing headers, we can't really http.error effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to move it up here above this switch statement. And I'm going to return if that happens. And then finally, we're going to io.copy from out Out files are going to be the destination. Out's going to be where it's getting written to. Make sure I defer out file.close. And is there anything else I need to do? I guess this error probably needs to have a message of some sort. I'm just going to go ahead and just use this. Status internal server error. All right, so we copy it to the output file. Then we're going to come down through here, and we don't need any of this actually. Yeah, I don't necessarily care. What I'm going to do is I'm going to http.redirect WR, the URL is going to be /image/out. This needs to be reader URL is going to be fump.sprintf/image/%s, and this is going to be outfile.name, I think. Although I'm really hoping it doesn't have image in it. It could. It probably does. So we'll find out here in a second. That's fine. If it does, we should be able to fix it though. http.reader, no status found. All right. So I think I got this all right. We create a temporary file. We defer closing it. We copy everything from the primitive into that file. And then we go ahead and we redirect. Now, I know that we could have gone back to the primitive package and just had it generate files for us and used it. But the problem is we don't really know where the primitive package is creating its files. It's not really, maybe how we want the primitive package to be working. So I think this makes more sense to let us create the files here where we can actually create them inside of our, where we know our image handler is going to be. So then we're not just serving random files throughout the operating system. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this up again. Let me go ahead and go to localhost 3000, choose a file, and choose test. We'll upload, see what happens here, and see where we get redirected. All right, so we got double image here in this URL. I kind of thought that might happen. What we could do is just do /%s, because we know that this out file is going to have, what did we have before? Let me see real quick. Yeah, it's /image/, so it probably would have just added img/ this part here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this img prefix because we know that's already going to be as part of this. It's going to be part of the out file. And to double check that, I can actually just get rid of that img, and this is working. So like it did put the file there. We see it's inside of here. There's an output file. So we have this working. That's really all we needed for the files. Now we don't have anything to delete them. I'm just going to go ahead and skip that for the time being. I don't think it's super important because we can just manually delete these images right now. And you could always just set up some sort of cron job or something that's like every hour go delete every single image. And it might screw with a couple different users in the sense that they might have just created an image and then you deleted it, but it's not the end of the world. Okay. So we've got the image there. What I actually want to do now is not that. What I want to do is just make a page that shows maybe 5 or 6 different images, or maybe we'll do 4 to start with. And to do that, I also need to make sure I make this mode stuff work. So we have, where is it? We have these options. I'm just going to get rid of these options. I'm just going to pass it. Well, I like having options this way because it allows us to have more than just one option. So let me see here. Where do we call primitive? All right, in primitive here, I'm going to change this last bit. It's not going to be mode. Instead, it's going to be args. It's going to be a variadic slice of strings. And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this mode part here. So our arg string is going to be created with everything without that. And then we're going to say arg string is going to be append arg string args. How is, okay, it's not field yet. Okay. I should probably just go ahead and say args equals append the fields from arg string and then the args that we originally started with. And then down here, I can just say that we're going to pass in args ... All right. So for those of you who didn't catch what happened there, I've got the arg string that I'm still creating here with the fump.sprintf. I'm going to go ahead and do string.fields like I was before to split that by its white spaces. And then the slice that we get, I'm going to take the args that are passed in and append it to that, and then args is going to become that final result. And then I'm going to pass that into the exec.command. So that means that we can come up here and we can take this, just get rid of that. What we can do though is options is going to basically just give us an arg string. So we're going to say args is going to be an empty string slice. So var args, give me an empty string slice. And then we're going to say for each option in the range of options, args is going to be append args with whatever option returns. Because, you know, these options are returning a string slice. And that'll give us an arg slice. So then down here when we call primitive, we just need to pass in args ... All right, so that should have given us a way to define our modes. So we're going to go ahead and just double check that. And then I think if we have the modes working, I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of the options for primitive, maybe like an alpha one and something else. And then I'm going to stop this video. And then in the next video, I'll actually handle, and I know I'm kind of jumping all over, but I think that's fine. In the next video, I'll actually handle showing multiple images on like a single page. Where am I going here? Primitive.transform right here. File extension 33, primitive.width primitive.mode. Let's do rotated rectangle. All right, so I think that's the only place we're calling this. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the server, run it again, and I'm going to go ahead and upload another image. And we're going to see this one should just be the rectangles. I don't know what rotated means. I don't know if it's like diamonds or... Yeah, it looks like it just... Oh, it can rotate them is what it looks like. So that's the rotated rectangle version. All right, cool. We've got that working. If you look here, we've got a couple different images here. Yeah, we got two of them there, so that's cool. I think that's... What is this complaining about? I don't really know why it's... Oh, I know why it's complaining. It wants us to be URL. Because URL is what is it? It's not an acronym, it's something else. It's like ID. Whenever you're writing them, you're supposed to write them as all capital letters. Because that's generally how people pronounce them. But anyway, I think that's it. Yeah, it's it for this video. We're going to go ahead and jump into actually making a page show multiple options and actually choosing the options in the next video. Okay, so next up is giving us a way to give the user multiple outputs. And then after we do multiple outputs, we're going to have to give them a way to sort of go down through the path of choosing which one they finally want. So what we're going to go ahead and do next is... So we got this image here. There's two things we need to do. One, we need to create a couple different images. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this sort of... This whole part here where we get an out file. I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of that. And I'm going to make it a function. Func gen image, I guess is what we'll call it. I think that's fine. All right, so the reason I want this to be a different function is we're going to have to pass in a couple things here. And that reminds me, we're probably going to have an issue with this, but that's okay. Sorry. The reason I want this to be a function is that I want to be able to just call it 2 or 3 times up here and not have to deal with doing a bunch of other stuff. So I think it makes sense to put it in here. So let's go ahead and say it takes in a file, which is an io.reader. So this will be R. So this is what passes in here. It's going to take in an extension, which is a string. It's going to take n, which is the num shapes. There's an int. And then it's going to take in a mode, which is a primitive.mode. And I'm going to go ahead and make this mode. And it can return an error for sure. Can it return anything else? It's going to have to return an output file or something. So I think the only thing we actually care about though is the output file name. So let's return outfile.name, nil. And then we can make this be a string, error, return. So this will be the file name and then an error. And these two got fixed from I think it's Gophercises is what I have set up to run on save. All right. So I think that's everything. So we've got gen image here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here to the upload and I'm going to say error. Actually, I'm just going to ignore the errors for now. It's going to be gen image. I can't ignore the errors. And I'll tell you why in a second. 33 shapes. And we're going to do primitive.mode circle. We'll do B and we'll do C. And this will be mode ellipse, mode polygon, and we'll do maybe mode combo. And this will be D. So the reason that I don't want to ignore these errors is there's a possibility, and it's a very likely possibility, that I'm going to need to reset this file somehow. So I'm going to have to seek it to 0. And the reason I say that is when we read from the file, there's a very good chance it reads all the way to the end of the file and then it never resets it. I'm going to guess that none of the code we're running actually resets it. So we're probably going to have to reset it here. I'm going to try it without doing that just to see, but I'm guessing I'm going to need to do something like that. And that's all assuming I'm assuming uploaded files allow you to do that and it will work correctly, but who knows? All right, http.status internal, not status accepted. And this is kind of tedious and cumbersome, but I'm just going to go ahead and just copy paste it all in here for now. I'm not going to worry about writing the most glorious, beautiful code here. Undefined out file. I'll give it B. Remember that B, C, and D are all like strings now. And really, I don't even want to do that. What I want to do is I'll do fprint W, and then we're going to do some HTML. HTML, body, then here I'm going to do image, source equals %s. I really should use a template. Yep, I'm going to have to go ahead and just say range dot. So this is going to end up being a template, so I'm going to have to change how I'm doing this. And this will be dot. I don't think I care about anything else. Need to close the body tag. All right, so I'm going to take all of this. I'm going to say HTML is going to be this. Just tab that in. And then I'm going to say TPL is going to be template.new, empty string for the name, .parse. Text is going to be HTML. And I think I want this to be template.must. And then at the very end, I'm going to do tpl.execute. W, and the data is going to be a string slice with A, B, C, and D. All right, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating this really quick template that'll range over all the whatever data is provided, and it'll stick for each, item in the range, it's going to stick whatever that value is inside of the source for the image. So I have a string slice, which is the paths to all of these different images we created. And I'm going to go ahead and slap those all in there. I'm hoping these all start with a slash, at the beginning of the string. I'm assuming they do, but they probably don't. So I could return something like that, assuming that'll work. And that'll give it a slash at the front. It's probably not the... Actually, I don't want that to be there. So I'll go ahead and say images is going to be this for each image in the range of images. Images I equals plus image. And then we'll pass in images here. That should fix it all. Actually, why am I doing all this? I can just put the slash in the template. I'm not thinking today. So I just add the slash there. So I'm going to go ahead and hope that this works. I think I told you this is the one that I'm kind of expecting not to fully work because the file seeking stuff. Let's do test, upload. And this will probably take some time because it's going to, have to run like 4 different generations. It's going to have to run primitive. Unknown format. All right, so the real question, and this is what I should have done, is I should actually panic here. And the reason I'm going to panic is that I actually want to make sure I know exactly where in my code it screwed up. And I think I know, but I just want to go ahead and make sure. And the way we're reporting errors right now doesn't help a ton. I'm pretty sure it's happening as soon as it gets to B. I'm pretty sure it's trying to read an image when it's already, or read the uploaded image when it's already seeked at the very end of the file. And that's what we're getting here. All right, we did get a panic. Where was it? 45. So it's a B. Yep, that's kind of what I figured. So I'm going to put these file.seeks here. And I'm just going to go ahead and see if that fixes this. Well, I need to upload an image. All right, let's see how this goes. Well, it didn't error immediately, which I think is a good sign. Yeah, I can definitely tell that this is pretty slow, but all right, we got the circle version. We got the ellipse version. We got what looks like the triangle version, and this is the mixed shapes. It's got, some polygons. This must be the polygon version. So this has got the combos, because it's got circle, it's got polygons, it's got a lot of other stuff. All right, so we got 4 different versions here. You can't really click any of them to do anything, but we've got the 4 versions. And that's what we're looking to do. So in order to make the next part work, the part where we click an image and actually go do something with it, we're actually going to have to take this file that we have, and we're going to have to, basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to copy it or write it onto the disk. And the reason we need to do this is that, if a user were to get all these images back and click on one of them, say I want to use this shape, let me, maybe the next thing we're going to alter is the number of shapes we use. It's going to need the original image in order to create different variations. And at this point, we don't actually keep the original image. We abandon it as soon as we're done here with this file. As soon as we're done generating images, we never save this file. So we want to go ahead and save that file and somehow use it in our path. Oh, sorry. So that we can, return with it and use it in some way. So the next video is going to be focused on finding a way to retain this file and then finding a way to add that file to our URL so that it actually allows us to, go through this chain of different steps. So the issue that we have right now is that if we were to, we produce 4 images and we output them, but if a user were to click one and say, like, I want to use this, this mode, and I want to try to maybe choose different options for the number of shapes, we don't have the original image to do anything with. Like once we generate these 4 images, we don't keep the original file that was uploaded. We don't save it anywhere. We don't do anything like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change our upload handler a little bit to make this work. So what I'm thinking is probably a pretty good flow is to change it so that we have something like upload will it'll upload the image and it'll just save it into our image directory. So save image to image/some name, and then redirect the user to something like modify/image name.png, and then well, maybe not slash. It'll be something like this, some path like this, where we know as long as we're in the /modify prefix that we need to, look up the image that's the rest of the path, and then we're going to work on modifying it. And then maybe we'll use something like URL query parameters like mode equals 0, 1 or something like that. And if mode's set, then we skip that stage and we go to the next stage. We'll try to figure out something like that. Now, as you can see, I haven't really thought this through fully, but I think this is just sort of a good, crude first attempt for that. So we've got the file here. We have defer file.close. What I'm actually going to do is gen image. Well, not gen image. I want to do, what do I have down here? Do I ever create temp files? Or is that in my gen image? That must be in here. Yeah, I'm calling temp file there. So I'm actually going to call temp file here, and I don't pass any prefix in. I just need the extension. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call temp file. And I'm going to say file, on disk, comma error is going to be temp file. Prefix is going to be nothing, and the extension is going to be file path dot extension of file dot. Does it have a name? I think. Oh, I need header dot name. File name. And then I want to do from index 1 onwards because again we don't want. This extension has that period in it when we call it. It keeps the period, so we want to make sure we get rid of that part, which I think we do. Yeah, we do down here. So I could actually just take this extension line that I already have, keep it up top, and here I could just pass in ext. And then I'm going to go ahead and just separate this a bit. What I'm going to do now is io.copy. The destination is going to be on disk, and the source is going to be the file that was uploaded. And I'm actually going to check for errors too. If error is not equal to nil, we'll do http.error w something went wrong. I'm just going to kind of leave this as a generic error for the time being. I think that's completely fine. I mean, this isn't exactly a production-ready application anyway. It's just a little toy. So io.copy can return an error. So again, we should probably check for that. And this colon equals is going to give me issues because error is already defined. And I'm going to copy all this code, paste it in here. And we need to make sure that we defer on disk.close. I think that's everything here. So I'm actually going to take all of this code here that we generate. I'm just going to copy it all. And I'm just going to close up this. And I'm just going to create a new file and just paste this all in here for the time being so I can access it later, but I don't want it right now. All right, so we have all this, and we need to redirect them now to some handler. So http.redirect, wr, and then the URL is going to be /modify/ plus on disk.name, I think is what we want. And that's going to have the image prefix, which I think is fine. We can just go ahead and leave that there. It should be fine, I think. Trying to look and see how we're doing some of the other stuff. I don't know if there's something like file name. I can try file name and see what that's like. That might work better. And then the code is going to be http.statusFound. All right, so we've got this whole redirect going on. Has no thing. Okay, so we're just going to do file. No. What does Owen disk actually have? Oh, it's got name. That's what it was. Sorry, I'm floundering a little bit. Okay. So we've got the redirect, we got all that. Now I need a handler for this modify. So I'm going to do mux.handle func modify / and that'll cover anything with this prefix modify, because that's just how the default serve mux works. And then we're going to do func wr. And then in here, I'm going to say image path is going to be r.url.path. And I could do something to trim this prefix out here. That would actually probably make our lives easier. So I could do something like, where are we at? I swear I used it somewhere. I did it in the file server. http.strip prefix. But I'm actually going to just do this manually, I think. So up here, we want the path. So I want from /modify /.length, or not length, .length, I'm thinking of other languages. I want the length of that onwards, and then we're going to do f comma air is going to be os.open, and I think this is going to have the image in it. I think it's going to actually have the /. And I'm going to warn you right now that one of the potential issues of this is that it's possible somebody could give us an arbitrary path here and we could end up opening random files. So maybe it doesn't make sense to do that. Maybe we need to make sure it's in the image directory. So we'll do /image / and we need to make sure there's no slashes in the path name, basically. So we'll do golang file path. And we're going to look for maybe from /. I don't think that's it. So I'm looking for something that'll just give me like the file name or like the... All right, base returns the last element of the path. The trailing path separator is removed before the extracting the last element. I don't know if base is actually going to give me a file. And I also don't know, maybe I need to look in a different package here too. You know, I've got all these different, sorry, I'm just going to go to the path. And is there anything in the subdirectories? No, nothing there. Okay. So I'm looking for something like, well, maybe base is what I want. So I'm back in file path here. It has both base and it has dir. Dir looks like it's going to be the directory. Base, I assume, is the... I don't know if it's the actual last element or if it is just like the last directory. So let's just go ahead and try this. So let's go to Go Playground. And let's do some directory here.png, and we'll do file path.base p, and we'll print this out. We'll make sure we import, and it's going to give me here.png. Okay, so that looks roughly what I want anyway, so I think that's fine. And then it won't really matter from that point. So I'm going to say plus file path.base of image path. And knowing that that's actually the case, I don't actually care about modifying this URL. At this point, I can just pass in the entire URL path, and it's just going to give me the last part of it. Now, if we start adding random things to the path, that could potentially cause issues, but I think right now we're fine. If error is not equal to nil, how that managed to... Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. Then I'm going to io.copy. W is going to be the output, and F is going to be the input. And, you know, I'm just going to render the image right now. I know that's not what I want to do long term, but I just want to make sure it works. So I'm going to do something like w.header.set content type image/png. I'm going to do it PNG because I know that's what I'm doing, and this is just meant to make sure this works. Okay, so I think if this is working, it's going to redirect me to the /modify/ whatever the file name is, and then that handler should open up the image that's represented by that part of the path, and then it should, I need /, not, and if you're working on Windows, I will warn you that like some of these /, you might need to like alter your paths a little bit, because I'm kind of writing this very specific to my OS, which is like a Unixy type one. Okay, let's go ahead and try this. Who knows if it's going to work, but... All right, we got it running. Let's go here. Let's go to localhost 3000. Choose a file. Let's do test. Let's upload this. And it sent me to the image. Okay, so it looks like the image uploaded, and it sent me to this. It does have IMG in the path, which we might want to fix. So we might want to... where is the upload? I'm going to do file path .base on disk.name. But that should be enough to sort of get this working. So now what we want to do is we want this modify to do something like value. We need to get the query parameters. So r dot, we can do like form value, I think is one of them, that should give me form values from like the query parameters and other stuff, I think. Net HTTP Golang. There's different ways to do this. Usually whenever I'm grabbing this type of thing, I'll use some other package to sort of parse it out a little bit quicker. But I'm trying to just use mostly the standard library here and just dig through all of this. So there should be something like form value, and I believe this will just get me first value for the name component of the query. Post and put body parameters take precedence over URL query string values, but that does imply that it does get URL query string values. So we should be fine there. So what I'm going to say is mode string is going to be r.form value mode. If mode string is equal to the empty string, then we know that we need to render mode choices. Otherwise, and then we're going to return once we're done. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to say mode is crconf.a2i, and we're going to pass in mode string. And I think this can return an error too, but I'm just going to ignore it. Well, I take that back. I don't want to ignore it. So again, we're going to go ahead and just do something like this. It's a bad request if the error is not nil. And then we're going to say, all right, since we have a mode here, we're going to say, where are we at? We need to do number of shapes. So render num shapes choices. Okay, so I think those are the two ways we're going to go about doing this. So we're going to start off with this mode part because I think that makes the most sense. And I don't know what all this is complaining about. I'm just going to go ahead and just do underscore equals mode just to make that error go away. And we're not using the file, which is okay. Okay, so render mode choices. I'm going to make a function here that says func render mode choices. It's going to take in W and R, and it's going to take in a file, which is an io.reader. And I think that's all it's going to need. I'm not really sure though. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to grab this code here, copy all this, paste it in. So we're going to need an extension too, because I'm not going to pass that in. So I'm going to copy this extension stuff. I'm going to come up here and make sure that I get it from this. So I'm going to say ext is going to be file path. Actually, we'll do something like this. Defer f.close since I never did that. I'm going to say ext is going to be f.name, and I want just the extension, so it's going to be file path.ext. And then down here, we're going to do render mode choices. WR file is going to be that reader, and the extension is going to be extension. And I'm actually going to come down here. I don't know why I named this F. I know it's a file, but really I'm just going to name it R because it's a reader here, and that makes more sense. And then inside of here, I'm rendering A. I'm rendering, readers don't have a seek though. I probably need a read seeker. And then I can do seek here. I can do f.seek. F.seek. I've got this file is everywhere in here. So let me just go ahead and just get all three of those. Undefined. Oh, it's named R now. No wonder. Wow. This needs to be something other than R2 because I already have a request. So I'm going to actually name it RS for read seeker. And then I'm going to come down through here and everywhere I've got these Fs. I'm just going to undo a couple of changes. Make these all file again. And then here, I'm going to make this file. And now I'm going to select them all. I'm going to name them all RS. Save. And then this needs to become read seeker again. All right. Sorry, that was a bunch of really messy editing, but that's okay. So we create A, we reset, we create B, we reset, and then we create C and D and we reset. And this is with the 4 different shapes we're trying here. And this is, again, it's still really ugly code, but I think that's fine. What I want to do here is when I render these, I'm actually going to do something like width equals 25%. See if that works. I might need to do like a style equals width. Let's do 20%. Something along those lines. And hopefully that'll work fine. And then here we're going to href equals, the path we're going to go to is /modify/ whatever the file name is. So in this case, it's got the image. I don't want the full image though. I mean, it should be, our code's actually written, so if you put the image prefix, it doesn't matter, so I'm going to let it be for now. That, question mark. Yeah, we're definitely have to change the input for this. So this is going to be /image/. This one's going to be /modify/ this, question mark, mode equals, I'm going to need to call something mode. So that's going to need, this is going to need a new name. We're going to call it name. Call this name. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to go through and make links with all of these images back to this page with the mode set. And I'm just sort of looking at my template and figuring out what data do I need in here. And it looks like I'm going to need a name and a mode. So I'm actually going to come down here and say data is going to be a struct. Or it's going to be a slice of structs, rather. And in each struct, there's going to be a name, which is a string, and a mode, which is an integer. And then we're going to create this. So each one is going to be a name. It's going to be file path base of A. And then mode is going to be whatever the mode was used. So I've got mode circle here. And the code that I'm writing right now is like really, really crude for this. I would probably want to have this type of struct returned, like make a function that generates the image and everything and then return something like this. But I'm just going to go ahead and just hard code this in for now. So I've got A, B, C, and D. And then the modes I used were mode ellipse, mode polygon, and mode combo. Mode polygon and mode combo. And it's probably going to complain because these aren't technically integers. I could probably just make this a primitive.mode, and that'll be fine for the time being. This ends up being an integer behind the scenes, so it should end up outputting fine. All right, so I don't need this image slice, and then we're going to pass data into my template exec. Okay, I'm going to hope this works. Yeah, I'm thinking I've got most of the stuff right. We're going to see if this works. And then this should redirect back to this modify path again. Got to fix this, though. This should redirect back to here, but set a query parameter. And I'm hard coding it just into this URL part. So it's really not an awesome way to do it, but we'll go ahead and figure out better ways to do that here in a bit. Especially when we have multiple query parameters, it'll make more sense. But for now, I think it's just fine just to slap that in there and get it working. Okay, we're going to run this, come back here. I want to upload this image, so we're still going to do test.png. I'm going to upload it, And this is going to take a couple seconds again because it has to actually run all this processing on the back end for the 3 or 4 different versions, whatever we're doing. So hopefully we'll get something here. At some point. Well, that's not cool. Not seeing any errors. A bunch of new lines printed for some reason. There's nothing in the page source. Okay, so what happened? None of those panics probably called because none of them are doing anything. I'm executing the template. It's possible this template failed to execute. That's very possible. So I could say error is going to be equal to that. If error is not equal to nil, panic with the error. And I'm actually going to come through here and just change all these 33s down to like 10s, just because I'm trying to speed this up as much as possible. I've got a ton of images created, so I'm going to guess that it created them all. I'm going to delete these all just so I can actually track that. Okay, let's try this again. Clearly did not work fully, but that's okay. Okay, so if I come back here and look, I have, this is test.png, and it's generating different ones. So, we're definitely, it's generated the first one, it's generated, the second or the third one, like it's definitely generating these images. Okay. So something in our template is having an error. So source equals image slash, that error is not very useful, whatever it's, backslash quotation mark and attribute name, 20%. Not entirely positive what it's complaining about. So it's something in this template, this new one that I created here. Oh, I don't close off this A tag. That's probably what it's complaining about. It makes way more sense. Okay, so I'm going to stop and refresh this. And here's something that I'm finding interesting. I should be able to go to this page, and it should use the already uploaded image. So I shouldn't have to actually upload a new image. So it looks like it's creating new images, and that is working. So that's kind of cool. There we go. We've got 4 different versions. They're all very, very basic, but if we click on one, you'll see that, oh, I'm getting the extension twice for some reason. I'm going to guess somewhere along the way I'm getting the wrong extension. So, yeah, a lot of these have 2 periods. So I'm not sure why they have 2 periods. It looks like somewhere in my modify code I'm not getting the extension correct. So let me go in here, look. Yep, I didn't do 1: here. All right, so that should fix that. And then looking at these, when we click on this, you'll see here that we have mode equals 4. So what our handler is actually doing is it's getting this mode, it's saying the mode string is not the empty string so that we don't run this code. We instead come down here to this code. And it's, it's basically trying to do the render num shape choices, but we don't have any code for that. So here we could do render num shape choices, WRF extension, and we'll pass in a mode. So now we're going to define this function. And we need mode, which will be, I'm going to call it a primitive.mode for now. And this code is really, really ugly. And I just don't care. I'm just trying to get something working right now. And then you can always come back and refactor. So when we call gen image, we don't pass in the number of shapes. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, it's right here. It's just hard-coded in here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do something like, same idea here with A, B, C, and D, except I'm going to, I'm going to actually do something else. I'm going to take A, B, C, and D here, and I'm going to create a func gen images It's going to take rs io.read seeker. It's going to take an extension, which is a string. It's going to take in a slice of struct. And inside this struct, we're going to have an n, which is an int. And we're going to have an m, which is a primitive.mode. I'm going to actually make this a variadic parameter. So this is what I want this to be, but I don't want it to be like that exactly. So I'm going to return a slice of strings or an error. And I'm going to take this struct and be like type gen ops struct. It's going to be this. And now I can just use this as gen ops. And then I'm going to say all of this code, just copy that real quick. So inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say ret is going to be var ret. It's going to be a string slice for each option in the range of ops. I'm then going to say file comma air is going to be gen image rs extension. And then we're going to use op.n, op.m. If air is not equal to nil, we're going to do let's just return an error at that point. And then we're going to do actually we can do the seek at the start of this, rs.seek 0, 0, just to make sure it's always seeked correctly. And I think that's it. Oh, we need to use that file. Then we're going to take that file that we create and we're going to do something. What are we doing up here? Am I copying it? Oh, it's returning. Gen image returns a string, right? Yeah, it returns a string. Okay, so I'm going to say ret equals append ret f. All right, so gen images will just give us many different images, which is what we really want. And then I'd love to have this, return something a little bit nicer, but well, I think that's fine. So I'm going to do up here, images, error is going to be gen images, rs extension. And then here I'm going to pass in gen ops. So let's see, the first one's going to be n is going to be 10, and m is going to be primitive dot. Actually, let me create these gen options first. This will actually be better. Mode circle. Ops are going to be var ops, the slice of gen ops. So then I'm going to say, actually I'm going to do colon equals here. And then in here I can do this part. So mode ellipse, mode polygon maybe, and mode combo. I'm going to change ellipse to mode, we'll do busy. I think that's fine. All right, so images, extension. What else does this take? This is going to be ops dot dot dot. And here I'm going to say if the error is not equal to nil. I don't really want to panic it, do I? Yeah, I'll panic. It's fine. And this HTTP error is useless when I'm panicking, so that's fine for the time being. Not long term, I wouldn't want to panic. I have panics here right now because I'm just trying to keep them from debugging. So actually, I'll leave the code as it is. Delete all of this. Then we come down here to the very end here for the data. So I might want to say that the data is this type right here. So var data is going to be a struct of this type. And then I could say for index image and the range of images, data equals append. And this is where I probably want to name this struct, just to simplify my things. Type data struct. It's not an amazing name, but that's fine. It's going to be appending data with a data struct. And then inside of this data struct, I'm going to have a name, which is going to be image, and a mode. And this is actually going to be file path.base. And then the mode is going to be from the ops, the same index.m. And that means I can delete all of this and then keep that and then pass it in. Okay, so what's nice about this is that now if I want to add extra options, it's just adding a line here and the rest of my code just works nicely with that. So, that really makes that whole thing easier. And we could also actually, change up some of these other things like this render mode choices. I don't know why it's giving me an error here. Oh, it's because I think this is supposed to be rend num shape choices. This render mode choices, we could probably even make this whole function that if you just pass in this part, it does all the rest of the work. And, this part here will do it. So let's try to do that. We're going to say, actually, I don't want to do that. I take that back. But I am going to come up here. I'm going to pass this in, and I'm going to change all of these. These are going to become mode. And then this n here, we're going to do 10, 20, 30, and 40. And then we're going to do basically the same thing we did here throughout this whole thing. I'm going to just copy all of this. The real difference here is that going to be right here. I'm going to say that is going to be the mode. And I'm going to say that the n is going to be, I'm just going to do n for number of shapes. It's going to be num shapes. And then down here, this is going to be num shapes int. And then this num shapes is going to be ops I.n. All right, so we got render num shape choices. It's the same thing roughly. And this is going to, why is that not working? WR read seeker extension mode. WR read seeker is the file extension as an extension. All right, let me see why my code's not building. I probably didn't name this function right or something. Render num shape choices WR. This is file, right? F, yep, extension ZXT, and mode is going to be the mode that we, I need to cast it. Probably what I was complaining about. Okay, so I think that'll work. It'll just sort of, this third URL will click something there. So what we'd probably want to do here is just say something like, we went through mode here. We're going to say num shapes is going to be r.form value n if num shapes is equal to empty string. Then we're going to go ahead and do this and then return. Otherwise, we're going to do the same thing we did here where we grab this. So we'll say, I'm just going to show end string. And then I'm going to say num shapes, comma air is going to be end string. And then finally, will. We don't have any other options at this point. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and just ignore this. And just say io.copy, w and f is the file that we have, right? And we're going to do w.header.set content type. And the value is going to be, actually, instead of doing that, let's just go ahead and say http.redirect wr/image/ plus whatever the f.name is. And we'll do file path.base, just in case that's not what we have. And we'll do http.status found. All right, so basically when they choose the number of shapes, we'll just link them directly to the image, and that's just the end of the selection process. So they get to choose a mode, then they get to choose the number of shapes, and then we move on. Let's restart this server. I feel like I've got something printing, but maybe not. Maybe I have something here. Yeah, inside transform. Oh, it's printing out the output from running this, which I don't actually want it to be anything. So maybe it would be easier just to say if this is not equal to the empty string, then panic with whatever that is. All right, let me restart that server. Come back here. We're going to start this whole process from the start. We're going to upload this test.png. And this always takes way too long. The number of shapes ones is probably going to take even longer. And apparently I have an error. I have a feeling it's that panic I just added. Because it's probably like printing out a new line or something. Where are we at here? Server, somewhere in transform. Line 69. Well, let me go see here. Yep, it's this right here. Let's do trim space. And let's start it up again and see if this works. And I'm just going to refresh on the same page because this should just use that image that we uploaded already. And it looks like we got some panics. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop this server. I'm not doing proper error handling with that, but that's fine. I'm just going to let it. It's not really errors at this point. It's just I need to figure out if there was something in the standard out and if it was an error of some sort. And I haven't looked to see what errors actually look like whenever you run primitive. And I just don't care right now. I don't want it panicking in my code, though. All right, we've got the 4 choices. Let's say that I really like this one here. So I click on it. And we're going to see how this goes. I believe my server at this point is going to be generating one with 10 shapes, one with 20, 30, and 40. So, each of these is going to take a little bit of time. And at some point, it might make sense to start caching some of these results or something. I don't know. This is definitely not the fastest server. All right, so here's 10, there's 20, there's 30, and there's 40. So you can see that, this is like much more primitive. It doesn't have as much of the extra shapes, but as we get here, we're getting closer to the real thing. And if we click on, say we click on 40, it just brings us directly to the final image. All right, cool. So I think that's going to be it for this exercise. You can take the idea of what we have here, and you can go ahead and set this up so that you can add a lot more options, a lot more steps. You can also, write some code that tries to manage these images here. Maybe whenever you're opening up these images, you might want to do something like, I don't want that. I want in here. Let me go look for this so I can show you. Do we have an os.open anywhere? I swear we had just like a file. All right, so that's a file. So we could do like on disk dot. You can basically try to see like what other options there are here. Like maybe you could get the stat, which is the file info, and maybe you can try to figure out when it was created or modified last. So maybe you could have some code that basically says any image that was created within the last 15 minutes stays, but anything that was created before then we're going to delete. And it goes ahead and it runs like maybe every 10 minutes. So you could have something like that you run from your main, and you could actually just run that as something like go func. And then we could just have it like time dot, what is it? Time Golang. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and just do something like this because, well, I'm just going to show you the timer. I'm not actually going to do the image checking. There's like a tick, so you could use a ticker, and you could say, so you could do ticker like this. So ticker, and we can say 10 times, let's say 5 times time dot minute. And we could say 4, whenever t dot, I think it's C. Yeah, yes, it's C. C's the channel. So whenever we get a message from this channel, from the ticker, we know that the time is ticked. So then we could check for images that need deleted. And then we could just let this loop keep on recurring, because this ticker is going to fire every 5 minutes. So it's going to block us right here every single time until it actually fires a new ticker. So this would actually be just a quick and easy way of just setting up some background process in our code that every 5 minutes we could just run some code that goes through here and looks for images it needs to delete. So, that's just one way to sort of go about doing this. And if you do that, there's probably different ways to, look at all the files. Oh, sorry, I'm very tired today. You could possibly look for something that will just like give you all the stats for all the different files in the directory. You could actually go open every file if you really wanted and sort of look at different stuff with it. But, it's how you do that's up to you. Just sort of dig through the docs and figure out what makes sense. But I think I'm going to leave that as an exercise up to you, because this has already become a fairly large set of videos. And I think it was interesting and fun to do, but I don't want to go too much longer right now. All right, so that's it for this exercise. I hope it was enjoyable and insightful, and hopefully you'll join me for the next one.